I'm gonna go ahead and call this special call meeting to order. And Councilmember Walker just informed me that he's gonna come right back. I think he had to use the restroom. But I'm gonna go ahead and call the meeting to order for today, for Thursday, July 9th, 2026 at 10:30 a.m. The sole purpose of this meeting is for us to discuss the Morehead City Marlins baseball license agreement. And only for that purpose are we here today. So with no further ado, Mr. Randy.
Okay. I don't want to delay too much, but at the same token, there he comes. Okay. I didn't want to start and have to repeat. I'm excited and I'm glad to be here today, and I hope each of you are. My goal of this, as the mayor just pointed out, is to have a conclusion to at least one step of the process. We're not going to complete the process, in my opinion, until some additional steps occur. But we are in a position that, based on the league that our Marlins team participates in, we've been informed by them for a while now that they had to have, to be in compliance with the league, 2 seasons of available play to allow them to schedule for the subsequent season, which would be next season, because this season's about 60% over, and I'll talk a little more about that in a moment. But that's what's driven our need to deal with this in a timely manner, so that by the mid-July, they are able to proceed with their scheduling for the 27 season and beyond. Now, I feel it's very important that I present some information to the council, and I don't have a written report. This is coming from here and here. I've been on the job, as you well know, since May 1st officially. I've been thinking about it and working on it behind the scenes prior to that, but that's when it became official. My first day, my first meeting that was pre-scheduled before I came was to meet and deal with the immediacy of our stadium renovation project that is currently underway and has been in the plans for a while. And so this has been a high priority. When I was interviewed, it was also a priority of the council members individually and collectively that this is something that had to be dealt with. And this being the stadium situation, as well as the ongoing relationship with this pending expiration of the current agreement this year at the conclusion of the season. So that was handed to me, and I accepted that responsibility and not regretting it, and I'm not backing down from it. That I understand the responsibility that's attached to that. The additional things I want to point out, though, is to put perspective on where we're at today. I think we need to learn from how we got here. And I'm not going through every nuts and bolts and detail, and I'm not critiquing my predecessors or everything that's occurred since I was formerly city manager here, because that was 14 years ago, and there's been a lot of water under the bridge since then. And a lot of things have changed, and a lot of things haven't changed. But I don't want to rehash all of that history, because some of it I wasn't involved in. But I have tried to get abreast and learn as much as I could about current events and what has transpired. But my focus, I'd like to put perspective on this by giving not a history lesson, because most of you have been involved in various parts of the history related to Morehead City, some of you much longer than I have. But I think it's imperative that we put some perspective on how we ended up with Big Rock Stadium and how this community has evolved since, particularly since the early 90s and 80s and so forth, without going too deep in the weeds, because as I'll point out later in my comments, we've gotten pretty deep in the weeds, apparently, on some issues that maybe have caused us not pointing fingers or anybody in particular, but to maybe lose sight of the forest for the trees, if you will, by getting so deep into the minutia and detail of various elements of potential contracts and things of that nature and license agreements, that I do think it's important that we maybe refocus, as we talked about, a reset or evaluation of our situation financially and physically going forward in the budget process and the things related to that. I think it's not unhealthy to do likewise with our relationship with, in this case, tenants of a facility that the city is responsible for and is fortunate to have, in my opinion, and now has to deal with the realities of the operations and agreements that are associated with that. I'm not trying to be cryptic, but this city has changed a lot in the last 30 plus years. We've seen a community go when I arrived in Morehead City, and that's the only reference point I'll start with. The community has in many ways doubled in size, and I'm talking greater community, not just within the city limits, but the area of influence or the area that the city is responsible for includes a lot of areas outside the city, as you well know, that we provide various services to and are responsible for the planning, development, and so forth associated with that. Without focusing too long on that, the city obviously has grown. The city limits have doubled in size. The area of influence has gone from roughly half as much to up to 14 miles in length. We are narrow at certain points, as you well know. Areas of the community that are currently developed out were vacant. A good case in point would be Blair Farms. That entire area has been developed during that period, and it wasn't anything more than just open fields with a pathway to drive through it for emergency vehicles for a long time. A group of folks put together development plans for that specific area that saw that be added to the city, utilities extended, and so forth, and that's now a major part of the city. That same group had additional plans to bring development near to that area, and that was in the Crab Point area and in the Mayberry Loop area to develop a shopping center availability and businesses and the associated things needed for the new population growth. And that group put that together in an economic time that we've seen go and come. It's had ebb and flow, as it always does, with economic conditions changing. Now, some people may already be saying, well, where the heck is he going with this? Why is he giving us that review? Well, I'll tell you why. Because that is why we have Rotary Park. That is why we have Big Rock Stadium, is those developers during one of those ebb and flows periods saw that they weren't going to be able to pursue their initial plans for development. So they approached the city to fill a void of the city had, just like the challenges we have right now, generally in parks and recreation. We don't have enough parks, we don't have enough land, we don't have enough stuff to meet all the growing demand of our population and the particularly youth and ball fields and so forth. At that time, the city owned, and we did our first master plan, we owned, I believe, less than 5 acres of dedicated park space. And the rec center, that was pretty much it, the W.S. King facility, such as it was. And it was in great need of upgrading and repair, just like we're doing now with the expansion and improvements that we're doing. That group approached us because we were looking at a situation where a master plan was showing all these needs, and some of them were met with that development of Rotary Park. The soccer, we had nothing, pretty much. We maybe had one field that was available other than the schools. We now, or before I left here, I think we got up to around 90 to 100 acres of dedicated park space. The city's grown that some, and we've all talked about ways to grow it more in the future. So the need continues to grow, and I certainly endorse that and look forward to being part of seeing that effort to meet the growing needs of our growing community. That said, that's a bit of the historical perspective, but just be aware that but for all of those things happening and the city having the forward thinking and vision to work with private entities, partners, to make those facilities, and we got a lot of grant funds, we got donations from major groups such as Big Rock, and we named a stadium in their honor. Puck O'Neill, rest his soul, was instrumental in these efforts, and he specifically pursued the baseball element of a stadium facility that we've now realized thanks to grants, and we've gotten recent money. That brings us to the current running parallel. We had, when I came, there were two major things we were staring us down, well, three. One of them was we had received state grant funding that hadn't been expended yet. No criticism of why. I'm not going to go into that today. But that project has not been completed. It's just in process, and it runs up into the current season. The facility is still under construction during this season. The second piece was we had a need to extend or renew or do whatever you wanted to do, develop a new agreement with a tenancy. And one tenant, we had an expiring contract that runs out this year, and that's with the Marlins, or license agreement. At the same time, the city realized a long-term goal that was identified early on in this discussion, and I applaud the efforts of the staff, management, and the council's foresight to develop an agreement with our other mainstay here. One of our main economic development drivers is our community college. That's world-renowned, nationally ranked as a top institution. They had the foresight and agreed with the city to allow them to expand an athletic program that they are completely responsible for, to include a baseball program that's going to allow baseball games to be played in Big Rock Stadium. Again, I applaud that. I think that was forward thinking and good decision making, like some of the other things I mentioned earlier that have occurred with predecessors and prior boards. Now, where we're at now is that second piece is half done. We finished the agreement with the college. They're set to go into seasonal play. We've accomplished a goal that's been stated by some members of the council. Maybe everyone's would agree, I would hope so, to have 3 seasons of baseball play at the stadium. We now have a fall, and we have a spring season for the college team, and that's been sandwiched between those historically here and in other places is a collegiate players on summer break playing in a Coastal Plain League wooden bat program that has now been in Morehead City for 15 seasons and has had, by any measure, anyone who gives it a fair look, great success. They've won 2 championships. They've placed a number of players this year. Case in point, we had the most members of that. They're leading the league, tied for the lead in wins and losses. They put 10 players on the all-star team that just played this week. They're doing very well, despite a construction project that when I met with that group on May 1st, that was the first discussion with all the parties at the table that I know of that had happened regarding this current year's play and how we were going to manage that construction project in a safe manner that would allow citizens to attend as spectators and for that team to be able to perform on a field that was safe. All the parties were there. We worked weekly. We had meetings on a regular basis. We had fortunately, a cooperative contractor who worked very hard to make it a safe and enjoyable environment for the people that come to the games. We had a cooperative tenant who had not previously been engaged in the discussions on the project, but was brought into the fold and immediately gave us the needed input to help us get to a point that we could have a season. We had an excellent cooperative staff who broke their backs essentially, in a not really, but they did great yeoman's work. We had great leadership from the assistant manager team that was here when I came, and all the way down to our public works and public utility staff, and everyone involved have made it to where we now are 60% through the season, and we've done it without incident, knock on wood. We've not had safety issues. We've met the code requirements, greatly reduced the seating capacity and so forth, granted for the season, and seeing that project, and we've seen our tenant embrace it. They make it part of their game ritual. They wear hard hats, the staff does, to encourage the people that this is a temporary setback, and that our facilities are still functioning. We're making it work. And that puts us to the point that we now have before us a pending deadline that wasn't set by us, but it's been known for a long time by those involved, maybe not necessarily by this entire board until more recently. But we're in a position to where by mid-July, for them to be allowed, as I said earlier, to schedule for next year's season and beyond, we have to have in place an agreement. We have begun the discussions during my tenure. Obviously, we had budget and some other major priorities that we've had to deal with, and we successfully checked those boxes with this board's support. Maybe not to everybody's satisfaction, but we have made it happen on a timely manner. And now we're down to the next step of this multi-phase steps of actions that need to be taken, the final of which would be a longer-term agreement negotiated between us and the current tenant, the Marlins, which could not be more fitting to have Big Rock Stadium have a team named the Marlins, who has functioned there for 15 years and done, in my estimation, unbelievable job of success in building a family-oriented entertainment venue. We're taking advantage of our venue to produce a product that has been well received by the community. I went out last night after a storm, a heavy storm, watched our crew did an outstanding job of field preparations, and it warmed my heart to see kids who are college players from all over the country out there having fun, who aren't getting paid to do it. They're doing it to enhance their summer experience and to further their careers, hopefully with baseball, to the ones that go beyond college. But it really made me feel good to see it, and to see the host families come anyway and be there, and many of them, and do everything they did to support this team that they think so much of, that has had long-lasting family relationships built with former players over the last decade and a half of experience that we've had in this community. So I say those things from the head and from the heart. But when we come down to the business side of it, what we've got before us is, I think it would be a really big loss and a mistake for this city to allow the technicalities of a deadline such as we now are backed up against that wasn't my doing nor yours. That is just the reality of where we're at. Prior negotiations aside, wherever we stand on those, we now have to do something to allow this opportunity to continue. And it's my recommendation that this board consider what I've presented to you today, or presenting to you today, is a modification of the existing agreement which will allow us over the next several months, preferably well in advance of next season, to finalize a longer-term agreement in like manner to what was done with the college in many respects, up to hopefully a 5-year agreement like we have with the college, to put this to bed and have that done before next season, so we're not right back in the same position of not having compliance with the league rules of 2 seasons in the bank before they'll allow them to schedule. I can walk through the particulars of this. It's primarily extending, and the attorney can comment on this as much as you need him to, but what he has done at my request, crafted an agreement that allows us to extend the current agreement for 2 seasons through 28, and with the understanding that we need to accomplish a longer-term agreement by before next season, or by next season, that would give us longer-term value and a commitment from both parties. That said, the only things that we are forced to do, in so many words, is we can't have inconsistencies between the extended agreement and the agreement already in place with the college. So we crafted this amendment to modify those provisions that would be direct conflict with the colleges. And it also recognizes and hopefully overcomes one of the big stumbling blocks that have, in my assessment, just listening to people that were involved, has been a big hindrance in bringing to closure a new agreement on a longer-term basis, and that's the discussions about the monetary side of it. Because what we are doing in this is we're reducing the exclusive use period, if you will, the language related to that, from what it previously was, which was basically the entire year, excuse me, to a 3-month period for the Marlins or so. The college now will have up to a 6-month period under their exclusive use for the provisions that are applicable to that. This doesn't preclude other events and activities, but it does give them the primary use of the facility during those periods. That said, that is a significant negative impact on the current tenant Marlins agreement, and a big change, and yet it's necessary, and that is why I've negotiated with the representatives involved this draft that I'm presenting to you, that I believe will be accepted if we leave it as is by the Marlins, and they'll execute it, and we will meet their league requirements and allow that process to go forward while we sit down and hammer out a longer-term agreement. I apologize in advance, and I apologize again for this lengthy discussion that I've presented to you, but I think that background and perspective as we go forward, we need to focus, in my opinion, on the task at hand today, and we'll have much lengthier discussions and back and forth going forward to try to achieve a longer-term agreement. I'm not naive enough not to believe that that will be the case, but I think there's time to do that, and what I'm trying to avoid is the board being asked to do something in the 11th hour once again on these kind of matters. And I'll assure you I'll do everything within my power to avoid that happening again. But in this case, a month ago, it wasn't ripe until we got the facility stuff straightened out, and I believe we're there. Now we're where we are, and that's why I'm recommending this action now, and why we're doing it today, to not be 11th hour on Tuesday night trying to hammer this out the day of the deadline, that didn't seem prudent or logical. So that's why we asked. I appreciate you agreeing to make time for today's special meeting so that we can have this dialogue and debate and make some decisions. So I'll stop, and I'll be glad to answer any questions If I've left something out, I apologize. I'll be glad to respond.
Any members of the council have any questions for Mr. Randy?
I just want to ask, if I read this correctly, if we go along with this amendment, it says for 2 years, but if we get something nailed down in 6 months, then
It takes effect and this becomes null and void.
Okay, thank
Yeah, certainly, obviously, we can't wait 2 years.
Sure.
We've got to do it before next year or we're right back where we are
you.
now.
Right.
Let me understand that we do need relief and we need to satisfy the league requirements. But at the same time, I don't want to build ourselves a box that when we resolve all issues and all questions, we haven't worked ourselves into another issue. This agreement changes drastically the revenue that is potential from the Marlins as a for-profit organization. It puts both teams in a parity situation that it changes the pricing structure into an activity-driven event. The more activities you have, you're charged so much a day, and your revenue could grow or shrink depending upon the activity. With this agreement and Randy's comment, what guarantee does the council have that by December 31st, we will have a signed agreement that addresses all of the minutia that has been argued about for 14 years?
Well, you know the answer, and I know the answer. That's yet to be determined, but that would be the goal, to have an agreement that resolves those issues that we can amicably and hopefully mutually. If not, we won't have a long-term agreement. And so I think that's the bottom line. You will have the final say. Otherwise, we'll operate pretty much as is for this period of this extension. And if we can't overcome those, but I honestly believe, and I wouldn't even attempt this if I didn't believe this, that we can find enough common ground for the good in this that we'll make it work. I really believe that. I think I've already seen some repairs made to frayed relationships. I've seen progress. I've seen it from members of this board, from the tenant. I've seen it. I've seen a positive attitude towards going in that direction. Today, in one sense, I believe this is not necessarily an olive branch, but it is extending the hand to let's work together and get this fixed and get it taken care of for the best of Morehead City. And that's what I'm all about. I love baseball. Y'all all know that. I played it. I've coached it. But that's not the motivating factor. This is way beyond baseball. This is our community, and we have a major section of this community that supports this kind of entertainment and activity being held in that stadium. Otherwise, they wouldn't have led the league and among the tops in the nation a number of years in attendance for these kind of programs. They're right up there, and they've done it. Obviously, our numbers are going to be hurt this year because we don't have the available seating and so forth. But the Lord's blessed us with great summer so far, weather-wise, and that's allowed us not to have any cancellations. And the people are coming despite the construction, and they're in good spirits, and it's full of kids, and the kids are an active part of that program. I can't think of many other things. I think there are a lot of communities in this state and this country that would love to have going on what we have going on. And I mean that. I really believe that. But that's a long answer to your question, Councilman, but honestly, I can't assure you we'll have it, but I assure you I will give my best effort over the next 6 months or so to make that happen. Because I think the potential is there, and I think there's enough common ground. And honestly, nobody's going to get everything they want, but particularly our tenants not going to get everything they want, and I think they realize that. But I do think there are some concessions that can be made, given particularly the difficulties of this year. And I roll it all together that I believe this is a fair resolution for this step of the interim extension of this agreement.
Yep. And Mr. Randy, quick question to add on to Councilmember Taylor's statement. If we could get an agreement done today, can we revisit this at our retreat, which we're now trying?
Yeah.
Yeah, our city clerk has sent out an email trying to.
I would
do
highly
scheduling for
recommend
November.
that be, by then, we hopefully will have a much better framework, and I can give a much better answer to the question that Councilman Taylor just posed by that point, if not well in advance of that. I'm not gonna wait till November. This has gotta be dealt with, and I've already discussed it with the ownership of, I anticipate by September, I wanna have a rough draft of what are the key bullets. Start getting feedback through your committee structure on those that are relevant to each aspect, and bring this to a head much sooner than that. Of course, I know there were probably interest in doing that, but I am only motivated by one thing, and that's to do what's in the best interest of Morehead City. And I fully believe, my professional experience on the line, that it can be done, and it can be done in a way that's fair to all parties. The Rotary Creed, if you will, fair to all concerned. That's what I'm after. And, you know, I'm not the final say. This board will be. And of course, we have to have a willing tenant to sign. But I didn't have a hand going to some of the points that were just raised regarding the monetary side of it. I didn't set the bar that we have now on the college side. I honestly believe I might have done it differently, but I wasn't here. I may have done it exactly the way it was done. But either way, I think that is a strategy that could actually, in the long term, play to our advantage. I honestly think we could do better under that kind of scenario if things fall into place and we are able to schedule events and things of that nature that are appropriate for that facility and otherwise, to where financially we may actually come out a little better. But I don't, you know, we're never going to gain enough from any of our recreational programs or any of our other services other than the utilities and the solid waste to make money and do much better than just hopefully offset some of our operating costs that are directly affiliated with the facilities. We're in the Parks and Rec business, and we're in it not expecting to turn a profit. And we never have, never will. It's an investment into our youth, into our seniors, all populations. But it's not just the kids that are benefiting from that program. I saw grandparents, I saw seniors who have been at this thing every year, and they're dedicated folks, and they love it. And I really think that's something we owe the community, to let it have another chance to continue growing and improving. And at the end of the day, other factors may eliminate this kind of activity. But don't let it be on my watch or the city's watch that we didn't do everything we could to try to extend that enjoyment as long as we can.
Yes, Martin, if you could help me, or maybe the attorney, the seasons for the Marlins, according to the amendment, will run from May 1st through August 31st. And then the college, their fall season from September 1st through October 31st, and then their spring season, January 1 through April 30th. Will there ever be a time where the Marlins organization could use it for camps? Is that explained in the?
In the other tenancy, it would obviously have to be a mutually agreed upon arrangement. But historically, the Marlins have tied most of their stuff in the summer program within this time frame.
Okay.
Today.
Okay.
Similarly, the college, theirs is only when college is in session, obviously. So that schedule is more or less the national model, if you will, for these kind of things. So I don't see any, but it could be done by mutual agreement between the tenants. They may choose to collaborate in other ways, but that'll be between them.
Okay.
Obviously, we can help with those conversations, but I think that's doable and very likely possible, as long as everybody's interests are protected.
Okay, so it's according to you, they've got exclusive during those dates.
Yeah.
And if there's any activity in those seasons, it would have to be a cooperation between those two organizations.
Exactly. And now, I will say this, just to further clarify, the city still has tools built into the agreements that we have in place to where the city determines if the field's conditions warrant play or activities, anything that's gonna damage our property, if you will, the city's park, we have the final say. So that's not being compromised or given away. We have oversight. And I think we obviously have used that over the years, but particularly depending upon events and those kind of things. Of course, they both have a vest, those tenants, they both have a vest in maintaining the facilities for the primary purpose, which is the baseball activities.
So the city would have the final say.
Yes.
They try to work it out amongst themselves, but again, it comes back to the manager
Yeah.
and comes back to you if
That's
there's
right.
any discretion or disagreement.
That's right.
Randy,
Yes, sir.
real quick.
Okay, Harvey.
We have grown considerably since the Marlins have been there.
Yes, sir.
Now, my focus, I'm a Marlin fan, but my focus is the city,
Me too.
okay? The stadium. You know, those are some of the things that we have to focus on, okay? Whether it's the Marlins, whether it's the Orioles, whoever.
College, whoever.
Yeah, whoever.
Krakens.
Right. So what I want to hear is how we now move into this next phase. Okay. Now, for example, this sounds cold, but I don't feel like I'm under pressure because this should have been handled a long time ago. I mean, to sit here and tell me we got 48 hours to make a decision on something that has nothing to do with the city, really. But I think the management of the Marlins should have been, let us know about this a long time before now. Okay.
Well, I understand they did, but I don't know if it arrived at this level of the board. I don't know.
Right. So what I'm saying is,
It's not new that we knew that they had to have an extension to the agreement. That's been known for 5 years.
right, but we have a contract that has been in place.
That's correct.
That we were trying to put forward that has not been addressed. I think everybody on the board at one time voted for it. And they were supposed to be going to negotiations with it. So there's one in place now that we were going to work with. What I'm saying now, and after hearing you speak, we need to focus on how we're going to grow into this, focusing on the stadium. The stadium, it doesn't matter who's in there. Now, the rent issue, or how much we're going to recharge the rent, how much we're going to charge for security and all that, that's a city issue. That's not a Marlin issue.
That's correct.
What I would like for us to do is to get ready to be prepared for something like this not happening in the future,
I agree.
you know. So I like the idea. Now, as far as changing a contract, the only thing that I saw, I think I read, is the same. I saw something there, 25,000. Is that still what's going to go on? Are we still going to do that?
No, it
Says
will be
license,
based
yeah.
on a per unit, per event, like the college agreement that
Well,
has
and-
now been adopted.
Now, what they just sent me, is this a copy of the proposed contract?
That's the old one.
That's the old
back.
one.
That's
All right, so,
22.
so
And it would be modified as stipulated in this addendum or amendment.
okay, so do we have that highlighted somewhere?
Well, that two-page, it's got signature pages up to 4-page, but the first 2 pages of it highlight the addendum
Okay,
provisions, which in 90% of it is the same. We have, 3 or 4? 4 items that need to be adjusted to address those inconsistencies and the discussions I've had with the ownership, the tenant, on what they're willing to agree to at this juncture in this interim amendment. And that's what these 2 pages reflect in those 4 bullets.
What I'm hearing, and what bothers me, is to sit here and say we're gonna do a 2-year agreement. But that, we only have to do that is because that's what the league has demanded. That.
Well, they've set a standard. They came under new ownership than what it used to be. There's a major corporation now that owns the league, the Capital Broadcasting Group. I'm sure you're very familiar
Yes,
with.
right.
They took ownership, and they don't. I don't want to say don't play games, but they don't allow people that aren't fully committed and bought in. And their standard that they established when they took over is to become part of the league, you have to meet all their requirements. But one of their stipulations is you have to have a facility and have a commitment that you have use of that for 2 seasons
Well-
before we let you schedule next year.
Well, let me ask you this. If we do this for the Marlins, can we say to them that they have to have an agreement within 6 months? With-
Oh, they want to do it right away, but we can't get it done by Tuesday. It's-
Right, okay, but I'm
Yeah.
saying, we don't, yeah, so.
Yeah, they're prepared, and my understanding, they have been prepared to negotiate an agreement for a year with the city. It didn't come to fruition. It didn't bear fruit. And I'm not gonna, again, I'm not pointing fingers as to who or whatever is at fault, if there is fault. But I will say that has been the understanding I've had, is this has been a desire on the part of the Marlins to have an agreement, and that's why negotiations or discussions occurred quite a while, over a year.
Well, let me ask you this, if we decide to do this today, can you start going into negotiation with the bar?
I started last night in anticipation of that, honestly, and part of this addresses some of the stumbling blocks, but there's a number of others. And I anticipate that we'll be doing that on a regular basis as soon as their season concludes, which is the first week of March roughly, or, of August or so, that we will have extensive discussions beginning as early as September 1. And we're also going to have discussions between our tenants to eliminate any issues between them in the transition periods between. This year is particularly going to be challenging because our contractor is expected to be there into the college's season. So we've got to work all that out. And as long as you got everybody at the table, everybody has their say. At the end of the day, the city has to make some calls in some of these cases.
Okay, this is where
But that's the goal, is to do it immediately and have it well in advance, preferably by the end of the year. I'm making a lot of deadlines for myself, but.
Okay, when we lay out our contract that we have, that we're gonna use for the stadium,
Yes,
okay, this is for the stadium.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter who it is.
which will be in great part crafted by what the council's already agreed to with the college. Much of it is the
Right,
same.
so what I'm saying is if that's gonna be out there and it cannot be agreed upon, then we need to move to something different.
We'll look at alternatives then.
Right.
To accomplish our longer-term goals of having 3 seasons, it requires 2 tenants. And so we certainly will have to look at all potential options if this effort fails.
Okay,
And I don't think it's gonna fail, but at the same token, I'd be foolish to go into a negotiation expecting it to fail.
right,
And so I'm going into it expecting it to succeed, but I don't control that.
right.
The city doesn't control it because it's partnership. I mean, we're doing an agreement, and you gotta have both parties, all parties, an agreement. And honestly, I've already had discussions with the college, and I think they're in their infancy of starting their program. I wouldn't be surprised if we don't have to make some tweaks to their agreement at some point in time that might come out of this discussion just because they are learning as they go. And nothing major, it'll be minor stuff, but I hope we can negotiate those to a point that'll hopefully be deferred until their next renewal, which would probably start discussions in about 3 years.
With that being said, Mr. Randy, I feel like it'll be advantageous if we can get the Morehead City Marlins and the Carter Community College baseball team, the Krakens, get them in the same room soon.
Well, when we've
and have
got
a
a,
meeting.
when we've got a license agreement, pardon me for interrupting you, Mayor, but when we have a license agreement with both parties, that's behind us, that's a given. We have to have representatives communicating on some of these details that are three-party considerations.
Yeah, I know what you're saying, and today's purpose is to get that license agreement.
Yeah, until we have that, you know,
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion if I
Well,
can.
now I got some comment.
Good.
I was curious to know, where do they come up with the per event fee?
my understanding, the Marlins didn't. That is an outgrowth of the discussions with the college. I wasn't involved in those, but that's my understanding. And the city has on our fee schedule a fee for the use of that field and that facility. And that's where that number originates.
Yes, sir.
And so, I know, we're not looking to make a profit, obviously. I'm gonna be curious to know, and I know it's gonna take some time to flesh it out, whether we're gonna be close to revenue neutral. whether
Exactly.
we're
I want to
going
do
in the
that
hole.
assessment. I want to do that.
If we are going in the hole, how much, how we balance that versus the service to the community and things of that nature. So, I did want to get it on the record that, hopefully by, first of the year, we can kind of get some sort of assessment on
We
what
can
that's
do
gonna
that.
cost.
And one other point, and this goes to something Councilman Taylor mentioned, is we'll want to look at that consideration. Is there a distinction in those kind of things for the user between for-profit, nonprofit? We have
was the
that in
second
some
point I was gonna
cases. We
mention.
don't in others. So I think that's a discussion that the city needs to have
Right.
about going forward.
Because next time this comes around, want to have some more background and details, because, we're kind of under the gun right now. and,
Exactly.
Sort of going in a little bit blind on this, so, but yes, I think it's important to kind of get an assessment on that, figure out where we are.
If George will indulge me before you make your statement you're about to, George. I am concerned that I think this agreement should outline the need to draft that final conclusion and provide dates to begin and end the results. I disagree with the concept that we ought to wait and have these discussions at this November strategy meeting. Again, we're waiting to the last minute before the end of the year to begin. I like your idea, Randy, that we ought to start September, August,
September's good.
whatever, but we start early.
Well,
Right now, we have not agreed because the Marlins left the meetings, and we can never reach a negotiated agreement on such things as we want a family-friendly atmosphere. We want to control what type of products that may offend ladies or young children. We want to be careful of what type of beverages are sold, again, to maintain a family environment. I'm not content with the Marlins' lack of participation. Do you see them in the room? I am not content that we can rely that this is just going to happen. If we don't require it in this document,
Bill,
I don't think it will.
I hear what you're saying, but that is not up to the Marlins, that's up to us. I mean, that's our stadium. I mean, they shouldn't have to be at the table to discuss those things that you're just talking about.
Eventually, you got to have somebody to sign an agreement.
Well, I mean, it's.
And if you don't have both parties, how does that happen?
Well, no, what I'm saying is, it's our stadium. People are gonna play in that stadium. It's like you're renting a house. It's like you're renting an apartment. When you go to rent an apartment, they got 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, whatever you got, okay? You don't go in and say, well, I'm gonna take that bathroom out, I wanna put this stove in. No, we haven't agreed, that's what I was wanting to say. We're going to have a stadium that is for the city, and this is what we're saying. If you wanna rent this stadium, these are the requirements, this is what we've got.
And my goal will be to negotiate an agreement that takes into consideration those things that I'm shared to the maximum extent that, we can get somebody to agree to them, and then we negotiate and find out the common ground, see what's not, and try to,
Find somebody who will.
But Mr. Martin or the attorney, is it fair to put in this agreement or an understanding of after the season is over that we will renegotiate in 90 to 120 days?
no, I don't think it needs to be in this agreement. What it needs
Okay.
to be is between you and me and this board.
Okay.
Uh,
But what do you
This
think
is
is
my
a good?
strategy.
So what do you think is a good time frame?
Well, it
Their
has to be
season-
done
their
before
season-
July. It
okay,
has
so-
to be done before July.
Okay, so their season ends August 31st.
And we know how busy budget time gets.
Yes,
So
sir.
it's, in my estimation, this needs to be accomplished by year end, calendar year
Okay,
end.
so-
But we can't wait till, my thought on the mayor's comment about the retreat, that's when you get an update on where do we stand? And you get a litmus test. Is this
Right.
gonna work? If not, we pull the trigger on alternatives.
So that's
If-
90 to 120 days
Yeah,
between August and December,
yeah.
give or take. Would you be, I mean, without putting it in the language of.
Well,
of
similar
this-
to what we did on the budget reset discussion, the board made a separate motion to ask me
Sir.
to, or
Well, we're gonna
direct
see
me
where
to
this one
do
goes
so.
first. I make a
Yeah.
motion to recommend the amendment to the license agreement of Big Rock Stadium between the Morehead City Marlins baseball and the town of Morehead City, as presented.
Okay.
I'll second.
Motion on the floor by
I'll second.
Mayor Pro Tem George Baloo, seconded by Councilmember Harvey Walker. Any discussion on this motion?
But the only thing I was gonna say is that we already heard Mr. Martin say, as of last night, he already started some of that
Right.
discussion.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a positive, obviously.
Actually, I started about 2 months ago,
Well,
but
Okay.
I've made some progress last night.
I amend my comment.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the only comment I have, Mr. Martin, is you've heard us, we would like to have something, no more than 90 to 120 days that we come back and renegotiate this thing and make sure that we're not here at the
I
midnight
don't,
hour.
I don't think that's unreasonable at all.
Thank you,
Okay.
George.
And that can be a subsequent action or whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
If
I-
this
I-
passes.
I
If
mean,
this
I think
pa,
it's
if this
in the
doesn't
language.
pass, that changes the
I mean, I think
dynamic.
it's in the language and discussion of the motion, and if that's okay with the council, I'm okay with it, leaving it in the language of the motion.
It seems like with Randy's commitment, and I value Randy's, word, to a great extent, that I would agree to support it. But we got to get this matter solved.
Yes, sir.
The next step is essential.
And if we can't get the other partner to the table, which is at his volition, then we do go to alternative methods to find a participating partnership.
And Bill, just for the I do not say this to be argumentative at all, but the last time that we discussed this as a council and the manager, Marlins organization was in the room but was not allowed to speak. So, I hear what you're saying, that they need to have some dialogue with the manager and the council, but that's the way
It's
In all
absolute-
fairness, the way I remember it, yes, he was in the room at the very beginning, but then he walked out.
he did, but then he was not scheduled to speak in discussion.
Yeah,
That's the way I remember it.
That's never bothered him before.
Bill, I also, in Buddy's defense here, in the Marlins, they're not partners, they're tenants,
Correct.
I agree with that
Okay.
concept.
all right?
And I get your point on that.
Yeah, I know what Councilmember Taylor is saying. It is good to have the Marlins owner Buddy Bangle in the room, so I understand what he's saying 100%. To my recollection, last year we had 2 meetings discussing the Marlins contract. First meeting, Mr. Bangle was in the room. He was asked to come to the podium. He answered questions, and to me, that's probably the closest we got on being on the same page. Like Mayor Pro Tem was saying, second meeting, he was here and wasn't on the agenda to speak, wasn't asked to come to the podium, and he did leave, like Councilmember Abel said, he did leave before the meeting's end. But I agree with Councilmember Taylor, going forward, if we can get this contract done today for the next contract where we're seeking a long-term deal, definitely would love to have Mr. Bangle here.
Well, once we see where we stand, and I think you'll see him a number of times.
All right.
Absolutely.
Vote.
And I invite you all to join me in going to see what's the product we got going on right now for the rest of the season, and make your own judgments based on that.
Are you gonna sing the song at the seventh inning?
No, but I'll sing it with you. But I will say this, I will be there with you, and I'll pay for your way out of my own pocket.
We'll let you do the doo-wop, okay?
Would you take me out to the ball game?
Okay.
Okay, is there any
Excuse
other
me,
discussion?
Mayor,
Yes,
excuse me.
Madam Clerk.
When Mayor Pro Tem Baloo made his motion, he amended it. Are we amending it to the 90 days?
No.
No,
That was just part of the discussion.
Okay.
just show it in the record, and
Yes.
And Harvey seconded it.
Yep.
Yes.
So now we have the opportunity to vote it.
We do?
Yep, I mean,
We
if
do.
y'all don't have any other discussion,
You
Okay.
understand that the motion is as presented?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yep.
Yes.
That way you know what you're voting on.
absolutely. Okay, well, hearing no other discussion, all in favor of the motion, indicate by raising your hand. It's unanimous.
if I could, I don't want to belabor it, I know some of you are on a tight schedule. I want to thank you, each of you, for your heartfelt feedback you've provided me and your logic that you've provided me. And thank you again for the opportunity to help the city I love and the city I live in prosper. And I think you made a really good step today towards a brighter future and a better relationship with all our tenants, but in particular with the Marlins.
Yep. Well,
And
you
and
said.
Mr. Bingle did tell me he had a conflict this morning, but he will be coming by later today with this action to execute his side of the agreement. Is that my understanding? That's his intention, as
That's
is.
awesome. And Mr. Randy, you said something earlier that was key. The key word you said earlier was community. We're not here today for the city council. We're not here today for Mr. Buddy Bangle or the Marlins baseball team themselves. We're here today for the community. And I've attended 3 Morehead City Marlins baseball games this summer. And I haven't heard from one person that they did not want the Marlins here. Every time I talk to someone in this community, they said, Lee, please do everything in your power and ask the city council to do everything in their power to keep Morehead City Marlins baseball in our community. The host families that host the players, they have been blessed by this baseball team. Not only kids, but as what was mentioned earlier, older adults have been blessed by this Morehead City Marlins baseball team. And we always talk about bringing entertainment and bringing a family-friendly environment to Morehead City. So we've taken this next step and getting this contract done today. We're honoring the wishes of our community. And we got some of those community members here today, Mr. Wayne, Anthony Sadorski back there, who attends every single Marlins baseball game. And we also got Andrea back there, who's a volunteer with the Marlins. And they can tell you firsthand that Marlins baseball, not only is it Morehead City and is it a part of what we do and the fabric of what we do as far as family-friendly entertainment, but Morehead City Marlins baseball is who we are. They've been here for 16 years. I just think it will be a disservice to this community and the citizens that pay taxes here to not at least sit down and try to work out a long-term agreement going forward in the future. With that being said, I can go ahead and adjourn this meeting, and thank you guys for attending. Mr. Richie Paler back there, Jimmy Paler. Mr. Richie was my school teacher, so every time I see Jimmy, I see Mr. Richie. Now they look alike, but thank you, Mr. Jimmy, for coming in and attending. He's been big in our community when it comes to sports. He was a volunteer umpire, referee, and prayerfully in November, he'll be elected to the Carter County Commissioner Board. So we look forward to you working with us, Mr. Jimmy, and attending today and supporting what we're doing here in Morehead City, because he'll be one of the county commissioners over District 3, which District 3, you know, encompasses Morehead City. So we look forward to doing some future work with him. Mr. Randy.
Mayor, since you mentioned future Commissioner Paler, I don't agree with all his calls on the baseball field. Can't help but throw that in, but he is an institution in this community.
You got to come to the microphone.
Well, we just hope that his decisions on the county commissioner board will be better than his calls.
Well, that's good anyway.
Mr. Mayor, I do want to remind everybody, the Big Rock Kids Tournament is going on today and tomorrow and Saturday and Sunday. So if you get the opportunity to come down to the weigh station, I think they got 50 to 60 boats that are participating. So the weigh station will be open from 3 to 7 each day. So if you get an opportunity to come down to the waterfront, we have a lot going on in our city and a lot to be proud of.
Is
Thank you.
50 to 60 a big number or
Yes,
good
sir.
number?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay.
It's not quite, nowhere near as big as the Big Rock tournament itself, but for a supplemental tournament like that, it's a good number. Yes,
For
sir.
kids, too.
For kids. Yes, we have kids, and this is a release tournament. They will be bringing in some game fish and weighing game fish, but they released the Blue Marlins for the kids tournament.
Yeah. And as the chair of this meeting today, I know it's not on the agenda, but if there are any citizens out there that would like to come to the podium to give comment, I always welcome you guys' opinion and your feedback. So you have 3 minutes to speak.
Hi, I'm Mary Martin. I live across the street from the Marlins, and you guys are getting hijacked. They're taking your values, they're taking your beliefs, and they're just turning them around. They speed down the street, they wreck the driveway. They have no concern about the neighborhood in which you put this ballpark. That's my concern. All we talk about is the Marlins, the Marlins, the Marlins. The neighborhood listens to music all day long when they're there. When they're not there, it's on. If somebody's in that house, it's on. They had somebody staying in the house that they rent for an office overnight. He does what he wants to do. I have a hard time understanding that. No, I don't. I understand. It brings money to the community. It gives the community something to do. It gives people who come to town something to do. The neighborhood in which this park is located is taking the consequences of this. I don't know what else to say. I talked to Mr. Martin. He's so pro ballpark, it doesn't make any difference. They have come down that dirt road, Mazzell Drive, to the point where it is now rippled, 20 cars a day. Nobody's going to do anything about it. Nobody can or you can't park over there because they're doing construction. So we wind up with the mess. And nobody cares. Nobody cares about the people who listen to that music, look at the lights, hear the noise. It's just, oh no, this guy's hijacked you. He says his contract with you, he couldn't have done a better one. And he's going to push and push and push and get the other things that he wants as well. And that's all I have to say. I'm disappointed. Thank you.
Thank you for your feedback, Ms. Mary. And we'll talk to Mr. Bangle and see if we can address those concerns and those issues you have.
Is the music profane? Is the music, is there a lot of profanity in it?
No, I was thanking you for your feedback, and we'll get with Mr. Bangle and see if we can address those issues and concerns that you have. So they are legitimate. Okay, Andrew?
Hi, Andrea Sybeck, 4105 Sound Drive. I have worked with the Marlins for the last 2 seasons. I enjoy it. It does bring joy to the faces that I see in that stadium day in, day out. It also, the host families and the team provide, a way for the players to further their academic and their athletic goals, and also those student interns with their goals, their career goals, and their academic goals as well. So thank you for taking the time to do this on and off cycle, and I will see you tonight at the game in the merch tent. Thank you. Also, I think it was Mr. Chambers. The music is not profane. It's all radio edit when they play music at the stadium. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Okay, Wayne?
I've been a neighbor with the Marlins for 16 years. I live in Greengate, except for George. I probably live closer to him than anybody. And they're wonderful neighbors. There's been no traffic concerns. There has been no problems with DWIs or people walking around inebriated. I would say if you're going to have a DWI checkpoint, a new one appointed, put one at Lowe's Foods, and you don't need one in our area. And I hope that y'all will work together to give this gentleman and this organization what they need to be here long-term. I'd like to see a long-term agreement in the 5 to 7 year thing. I have a background before behavioral health. I was a coach, teacher, and an AD, and I can tell you the dynamics that they're working with, especially now that Capital Broadcasting has a hand in this league, they're going to need a longer-term agreement. I don't want to wake up one day, I'm 71 now, I don't want to wake up at 80 and I can't go over and walk over to a Marlins game. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Wayne. Okay, Mr. Jimmy.
Give him only a minute.
Mayor, thank you so much. Councilman, Mr. Randy, I think you guys did a great justice, not only for Morehead City, but for Carter County. I mean, it's not only Morehead City residents going out to these ball games. It's Carter County. I mean, I've been here my whole life. I look up in the stands when I'm umpiring these games. I see people from Newport. I see people from Down East, Sea Level, Harkers Island. So it's not just the justice that you're doing for Morehead City. It's for Carter County, and we really appreciate it. Thank you.
What's your best? You're out. How do you do it? All right.
He'll eject me.
Okay.
I'll
Are
be
there
ejected at the next game.
any other citizen comments? Okay. Hearing none and seeing none, I'm gonna go ahead and adjourn this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.